We play with things that are very innocuous, but also things that can destroy emblematically buildings. When I was a little kid, I had lots of airplanes, and I had lots of train sets, and I had lots of things that really potentially mean something in different cultures. And in another culture, this means something very different. We also grow up, and everybody comes into a sort of an adolescence in life, where we are with our friends, where we have that same sort of thing, where we're about to see the reality. And what this part means to me, and what I painted it, is that I wanted something to talk about how we lead ourselves with people that we know into situations. You know, we're always going forward. If you notice, things on this side of the painting are going towards the towers, inevitably. But before you do that, it's a gentle sort of nudge. There's nothing, we're a part of the future. Someone's leaving the other child here. But this child here, at that certain point, I don't know if anybody remembers, I know certainly with my life, I remember those moments of awakening. It's the moment that you first met someone that died, the moment that you first realized that your parents weren't perfect, the first time you realized you were in a tumultuous world that didn't really make sense. You're open, you're not blindfolded anymore. If you notice these two little girls, one is still blindfolded, she still doesn't know the fate of what's going to happen. But this one has noticed the fallen figure. And this figure right here, and part of allegories are really manipulations of our history in a way. Again, I talk about the palimpsests, about reusing symbols, and artists, I guess that would be it. Artists that like allegory are very free with the symbols of the past. They want to take things that you recognize somehow and give it a new meaning, put it in a new association. Somewhat like a rebus poem, but not quite. It's a way to take what some describe allegory as a vertical reading of history planted on a narrative, which you can see when you read here from left to right about what's going on. And I'm kind of describing it that way, much like people in the West read sentences. But this figure here that's fallen is a figure that I took from Picasso's Guernica, and I wanted to make a relationship between war here, but I couched it in the figure of an African-American man. Because I think that's really part of our American experience. We're a diaspora of different types. We're a community, ideally a melting pot, although it's fractious at times. But we're also part of a community, and we have to recognize that as uniquely American. We're classical in that we started out in a United States form with a pediment. If you look at the overall arch of this painting, it's a pediment much like you see at the top of a post office, or even at the top of, the Capitol building, or whatever the classical pediment, but we're also a melting pot of different types: redheads, dark-skinned, light-skinned, Arabic, a medley of different types of flesh hues. And I thought it was very important to make this picture as much a part of everybody as it could, because as an artist, my interest is in the audience. I'm very interested in how people perceive pictures, and very much how they can have a communion with this painting, and think about, again, how do they relate to somebody that could be an archetypal person, but also could be somebody that they've seen. And obviously, he's in a convoluted pose, and I really wanted it to show this sort of shock of falling and anguish from the buildings. Now, these two figures are interesting because I did make a conscious choice to personify the Twin Towers. And the poses are a amalgamation of three influences that I chose. One was Nick Ice's Vietnam napalm, which has anybody seen the picture of the little girl screaming? She's sort of got her hands out, she's running down the street, which I thought was an interesting thing, since people have made the connection between this war and Vietnam, which is somewhat controversial, but I really thought that showed her passion and her humanity, but her utter despair. The second thing is I wanted it to be slightly religious. I took it from a Masaccio painting, which is sort of the martyrdom picture, and the hands sort of reminiscent of images of religious saints, crosses. And the third thing is I wanted to take it was the sort of slightly, again, the slightly type that was sort of universally Arabic in just a hint, because I think what was happening to me is that, right after 9/11, there was these people that were working, that were American citizens who were of Arabic descent, afraid that somebody was going to come in and make, harass them just for being a part of this country. And I think we have to be very cognizant as we keep going on to remember we are, you know, a nation where we have Americans from very different, diverse backgrounds. So, and people are here act as, the other reference that I have, I think is important, is sort of the idea of terror and tragedy. It's another thing that these two embody. Terror is really something that people are caught off guard with. They're, in this case, the hands are pointing down, which is a sign of denial, so we're denying what's happening. And the second time, he's a little more relaxed. If you notice, the belly is a little fuller, he's sort of breathing, and the hands are out, which is traditionally an allegorical sign of acceptance. So one thing that we have to do when we have tragedy in our lives, not terror, but tragedy, is part of accepting our fate. If we think about, you know, the great tragic myths, that there was always something that they had, like Achilles' heel, or they had something that was going on that they actually had to accept. And I think part of, certainly my experience as an artist, is accepting that I'm fallible, that I am not able to do everything as perfectly as I want, that I try very hard to make a great painting, but it doesn't resonate with people in the way I wanted it to. And I think that that is part of everybody's condition as human beings, that we have a sort of time that we have to accept what we've got in life, whatever that lot is. I think that seems a very important thing. When I noticed the beginning of this side again of the painting, and this was really a very difficult thing to paint. I must say I spent hours and hours and hours painting the text on here, so I appreciate it if, after I'm finished, you go stick your nose in it as long as the museum doesn't mind, because I spent, especially on the script. But not, so I don't want to trivialize this. I just wanted to say that when I saw the two images that came to mind when I was studying for 9/11 was, on the left, I mean, was all the paper. I don't know if people remember the vast amounts of paper. I mean, it was, you know, the notes and the everything that was going on in millions of square feet. A building was coming down, cascading with dust and everything. And I put the preamble of the Constitution on this. And I did that not to really critique America so much as to know that we all felt that the rug was kind of pulled out from under us at the time. We felt, at least I felt, that I didn't quite know the direction this country was going, and something felt very unstable. I mean, we haven't had those kind of attacks on our country before. So I felt very uneasy about being in that position of not knowing where, you know, people, I was reading today in the Times, and they really thought that the United States was going to become, New York was going to become this fortress of, you know, impenetrable buildings, and we see some of that in the new Freedom Tower, where there's this sort of concrete base, and really this wall against the world. And I think part of that is, you know, you fear totalitarianism, you fear a disruption of who you are and what you're about. And part of what we're about is the Constitution of the United States. And it's sort of flooding and covering these figures. But on the other side, you saw all these people coming to give flowers. I mean, there were thousands and thousands of flowers, which is such a wonderful thing, as if people wanted to suffocate all the pain and anguish that people were going through. They brought the one element of beauty to the event, and just, you know, covering the dirt, covering the death here, covering the remembrance of anything that we had that was destroyed during 9/11. And the other thing this thing starts with is sort of the emblem of what I call as a continuative narrative, which is sort of these three figures, or at least sort of idea of these